Hello, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Circuit 42. I am Ian, who probably like five people know of, and that's all right. But you know what? We got the far more successful and far more awesome Circuit 42 alumni, Autumn Ivy. Pretty
Hello.
much, which that's basically what you've been doing, right? Just like podcasting, nothing, no gyms, no cosplay, none of that.
Yeah, just another podcaster. Can't help myself. That's it. 100% what I've been doing.
Totally.
Um no, I have the utmost respect for podcasters and for strict YouTubers. Like I could never, my brain does not function well enough to be like, no, I need linear focus on this one thing. Um no, I mean as per usual, I have been putting my fingers in a lot of pies. I've had several, I can't announce a few of the things that I've been able to do lately, but I've had the pleasure of doing a few new projects in the voice acting realm, which has been great. And I'm really excited for you guys to see where that's going. Still doing vocal work for Chilling, as well as, tryquin.com if you like spicy stuff. But
As we all do.
yeah. Otherwise, though, I'm still doing photo sets. I do mix in costuming with other stuff. And I had the pleasure of going to PAX East recently for Larian Studios as their official Carlac, which was absolutely amazing. Could not ever dream of an experience quite like that again.
Dude, seriously, your Carly cosplay is fucking amazing, man.
Thank
Like,
you.
my favorite has always been the Red Hood because I always
Mhm.
just thought it was so damn cool.
Eh.
And I remember even my spouse's my mother-in-law, she
Mhm.
saw that costume and she's like, "This is awesome!" Like she didn't even know what the character was. It's just that is really cool.
Thank you.
I think that's the
Um,
best compliment you can get, though.
I would say so. Like, I fully accept the compliment from your mom, and I'd say that's 100% in my top three.
Yeah. But seriously, like you've just totally, yeah, because I've been seeing all the content on it and I'm like, this is just badass.
No, it was really really cool, and it was such a pleasure. Everybody was fantastic with that crew. Like the other actors slash cosplayers, however they would like to be addressed, absolutely phenomenal to work with. Larian Studios themselves is just, I could not rave enough about them as a company and just as a general group of people. But I have some adjustments and some fine tuning still to really complete, because of course for some costumes you're always improving them. It's never top level. Sometimes you just got to keep reworking them for your own sanity. So but yeah, no, it was a lot. That costume took me a long time, but it was worth it.
I gotta ask, how long was a long time?
Um, so I would say that the outfit itself probably took me a week to get together. And that was between usually anywhere from like 6 to 11 hour days. So that was about 7 days. And then prosthetics and other stuff I was a little bit quicker about, but the actual um time it takes to put on all of it with the body painting and the prosthetics that I use, I think it's about a 4 to 5 hour period.
Now, I always wondered, like, because with a lot of cosplayers, I know they work with a team in terms of the applications and stuff like that. Are you basically a one-woman show or what's up?
Mostly, yeah. Thankfully I did have my partner Ellis's help, so he was amazing with a lot of that stuff because it is a lot and I can't do some of the back application alone.
Yeah.
So basically I had to teach him how to do application. And then we had to tag team it, which realistically, if I was trying to do it alone or if it was just one person trying to do it, it probably would take closer to five to 6 hours. Finally, though, I fine-tuned the prosthetics and a lot of the painting enough so that we cut, when the very first time I did it, it was 6. And then by the time this last 2 days that I did PAX East, I had cut the timing down to about 3 hours, which was insane. And that was full application for stuff. But when you're building onto a prosthetic like that, it does take time. And then of course you've got a body paint. So
And so how is PAX East? Besides
fantastic.
awesome.
It was smaller because I went to PAX West as well. And it was a lot smaller than PAX West, like extremely, but it was still pleasant. got to see a lot of cool people. Misty Mountain Gaming was there, so we got to say hello. Especially as I've been actually teaming up with a couple of TikTokers and YouTubers for Roll for Cake, and we've been playing a Dungeons and Dragons game together. So we had the pleasure of Misty Mountain actually assisting us with some of the sponsorships for that. So um, that was really helpful. But I got to meet them, which was cool. I also
Awesome.
got to run into a lot of pretty wild people who came up to ask for photos while we were doing our photo ops and stuff. Got to make a lot of people's days, which I loved. That was great.
I remember one of the first guests we had on the show because he had just finished, was it Resident Evil 6? Do
Mhm.
you have any idea how long ago this was? Was Matthew Mercer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is like I think at the time he had only like
Mhm.
he had done like Soldier number 5 for Call of Duty or something like that. But at the
Mhm.
time, Thundercats and Resident Evil,
Yep.
those were his two main
Bread and
roles.
butter.
And
Mhm.
it's crazy. Like talking about D&D, talking about role
Mhm.
playing online, it is crazy how much like people know him as a voice actor, but in terms
Mhm.
of gaming, it's just something else altogether. You
Yep.
know?
And that absolutely is how that works. It happens that way.
Yep. But yeah, that's freaking awesome. I haven't done tabletop in so long, and it's crazy looking at how much it actually has changed. Like the
Hmm.
person who cuts my hair, like um they do their own they're doing their own DMing on they're doing their own DMing and everything's through Discord. I'm like, this is weird, man. Because I
Yeah.
still am like, no, we need to be in our friend's basement at their house and just like yelling at each other because otherwise you can't smack each other in the head if they're
Nope.
doing something wrong.
Yep.
And I feel like getting smacked in the head by Autumn would be a just terrible thing to happen. It's like, well,
uh
your eye is over there and your the rest of you is over here.
that is the reason that we currently have a paddle campaign going, where I get to paddle the DM for one of our very final shows. So we're
Awesome.
trying to fundraise money for that. So if you want to see me, spank somebody with a paddle, I'm just saying.
Like life, it's life goals, man. It's like they brought back the watermelon. No,
Yep, pretty much. Oh man, wow.
this is how people know how long we've known each other. The fact that I know about the watermelon.
The watermelon video that I got
Yeah,
asked 100 times to do. Somebody actually recently asked me to redo it. I haven't done that in a couple of years, so I'd have to readjust, I guess.
you're like, give me money. Okay. It's like, oh fuck, what can I do now?
That's fair.
So, dude, horror, man, we've got to talk about horror because we always talk about
Mhm.
horror.
Always.
Um, what's the last horror movie you saw? And was it crappy or was it good?
You know, I so I've obviously had a lot of stuff going on over the last couple of months, which left me minimal time to watch the things I really wanted to in the horror realm. But I did have the pleasure of recently watching something I slept on, and I kind of regret it. But I got to watch The Jester finally, which was out of Shudder, I believe.
I don't
And
know the Jester.
so it's interesting because it almost is like they took the concept of art with like the weird attitude and kind of the mimery that he's got going on,
Yeah,
but they actually gave him a purpose. So he's not just like, is this character supernatural? Is he not? We don't really know. Oh my god, he just pulled a Glock out of a handgun. And then so it's not quite with the gratuitous violence of Terrifier or something, but basically much in the same vein of like the Babadook, how it's more of a metaphor for grief and like the process of what it's like to deal with loss.
yeah,
The Jester is almost like this pseudo revenge acceptance of self and grief and regret. um it's actually pretty interesting, but I don't want to give too much away. But I had the pleasure of watching that, and it was definitely slower paced at the beginning, but it gave me enough of a enough of an interest for what it was trying to do, uh to finish and see it through. And even though it almost comes off as like a YouTube, like something they adapted from a YouTube short, which is entirely possible, by the way.
yeah.
It still was good. It was just a good watch. Like I didn't really have a lot of complaints, and the complaints I did have were just me being super, nitpicky.
the fact that like you talk about YouTube shorts, like people don't realize that like some of the best horror directors that we've seen are literally people starting YouTube shorts. Like
That's very true.
was it the director of the I can't remember the director's name on the top of my head. The director of the
Skinamarink.
um um Skinamarink is a topic for another day. Um
Yeah, it is.
but the director who did the second and third Annabelle movies, which were really good, and I'm
Mhm.
like, what the fuck?
Well,
First Annabelle movie was awful, and then like it's like, oh, you started on making kick-ass internet videos with your wife.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so what's interesting about a lot of that is I don't think that people truly are giving as much attention to independent horror as they really should be. And I mean, it really goes for independent creators as a whole, but specifically in a large broad capacity and for horror, we're not getting some of the reach that a lot of these creators deserve just because people mark off independent horror. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like they think cheap jump scares and people under sheets kind of stuff. And then the beauty of stuff that is coming out of independent creators is that these are horrors that mainstream media either stays away from or intentionally chooses to divert, because they don't actually know what their audience is looking for. So we miss out on some really horrifying works that use subtlety or kind of unorthodox methods for their fear, their terror that they insert. um and we miss them because people don't spread the word, and that's why sharing and liking and interacting is so important.
This is what I love about Shudder. This is what I love about A24, and even though some of his movies can be kind of hit and miss, this is what I also
Mm-hmm.
love about Blumhouse.
Right.
Because everyone talk. I remember when people were talking about 2022, because 2022 and 2023, but especially 2022, is this amazing horror year.
Yeah, it really
And
was.
I know the Black Phone's ending.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the epilogue is a little lame because I'm like, oh, you're just kind of like your dad, aren't you? Because you didn't know how to end this. So it's like Eddie goes to school and everything is awesome, and I'm like, all right,
I
but
don't know.
like,
I will save it. Go ahead. Keep going.
but in terms of a movie, do I think it should have won the Chainsaw Award for best horror movie of the year? No, that should have been Barbarian, but it was still really fucking good. And the fact that we
I
got Barbarian and that in the same year is
In the
insane.
same year.
Yeah,
I really, really liked the Black Phone,
yeah.
for a lot of reasons,
Ethan
but
Hawke was amazing. Holy shit.
yeah, like phenomenal job on that one. I liked it even through the ending. I liked it because a lot of it set it up for this kid's kind of like progression for who he began as versus who he ended as. And like I like movies like that in general anyway. Barbarian, though, on the other hand, if we sidestep the award issue, Barbarian was phenomenal, which I am a massive Richard Brake fan anyway. I
Yeah,
adore him. I've never
he's
not
so
liked
cool.
anything he's been in, and he's such a nice person. Like such a pleasure to talk to, and
He's
just
surprisingly British when you meet him because it's
yeah.
like you feel like the most Texas man in the world, and then you talk to him, it's like, oh, you're crazy British. What the heck?
So I think he's Welsh.
Welsh. Yeah,
No, it's okay, it's okay. I was remembering because we talked about it a little bit. But either way, did phenomenal in Barbarian and actually has a new upcoming horror piece coming out as
you're
well.
right. He is from Wales.
Yep. Like we went to the Google system.
Yeah.
Perfect. um but he's got a new one coming out that he stars in as well that just looks phenomenal. um but yeah, no, I mean, if you're pitting the two against each other, like they were good for different reasons in different directions, but they were
Yeah,
both good.
exactly.
I also had I'm trying to think what else I saw besides Jester recently. Vicious Fun is horror comedy, and it's not new per se. Um But Vicious Fun is kind of a really good horror comedy piece. And I think that one's on Amazon Prime right now, I think. Um, Really interesting film. Basically, this journalist, it's kind of like during the 80s. So like a lot of the soundtrack is synth 80s and synth wave. Um, Actually really cool. But this journalist for a horror publishing kind of he's like an he wants to be an editor and he wants to make movies. It's got that kind of typical background. But he winds up accidentally getting locked in on a meeting that is filled with serial killers. And the concept is that the serial killers are basically in like this syndicate across the United States. So each state has a list of serial killers and periodically they all meet up. So this journalist accidentally stumbles on this meeting and pretends to be one of the guys who was supposed to show up because he realizes something really messed up's going on. So it's a ride from start to finish. It gets pretty wild. The gentleman, I'm so bad with this gentleman's name. The
Evan
gentleman,
Burke.
the gentleman that plays Death in Supernatural and like oftentimes has like the that role. I forget his name. I feel so bad. I see his
Oh,
name in my head.
we're talking about Julian Richings, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
But the cast is interesting, but he plays a character that you expect it, but you don't expect it. And I'll leave it at that. It's really interesting. So Vicious Fun is definitely a good watch as well. You just kind of have to go in knowing it's going to be like horror comedy campy moments type deal, but it is really really cool.
When you described it, it reminded me of the Dollhouse storyline from Sandman, and I'm
Hmm.
like, I want to see that because that was one of the creepiest and interesting parts about that whole storyline, and the idea of you have I don't want to assume that they're inspired by that,
Right.
but the idea of taking something like that, being like, no, we're gonna make that the whole focus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
because
I like films that kind of have a tendency to break away from the norm anyway,
yeah,
or just give you something different. And so I got finished doing my one of my first primary roles as a lead in a feature film for once, which was amazing. But I just finished. We filmed it, got everything in and done last year. It's a film called Bittertooth, and I believe it's now available on Momitu, which is Mometu. You can get it on Roku, I think. But yeah, so the film's available to be viewed there. But Bittertooth's concept follows along those same lines, where it's more of an artistic view as a horror film versus something typical where they feel the need to like beat you over the head with violence or something like that. It is kind of a psychological mind game, I would say, above anything else. So, but I got the opportunity to do that, which was fantastic. And on the opposite end of things, I actually play a lead villain in Carousel 3, whose name is Usagi, and she's a chocolate Easter bunny that is off of a carousel ride. That was wild.
I'm sorry, I'm just when you say something and like the brain just melts.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's exactly that. The movie itself, if you have never seen, because it's a trilogy, if you've never seen Carousel, it is quite literally Caroushell, and it is about a killer carousel unicorn.
I'm gonna watch this after we're done.
Yeah, there's
Okay,
three of
okay,
them.
I'm gonna finish WrestleMania and then I'll watch this.
Perfect. But yeah, so on the opposite end, that was very campy horror comedy, and it was really a departure and an exact opposite point of the other film of Bittertooth. So I've done some weird stuff over the last couple of years for
That's
sure.
Dude, that's what I love about the whole horror genre though, the fact that
Mhm.
like the best genres, there's so many different subgenres that you can do from it.
Absolutely.
Like it's kind of like how especially horror comedy, because whole horror comedy thing is just fun because you can just do some weird and even some dumb shit and just make it work.
Absolutely.
I mean, one of my favorite movies that's definitely a horror comedy is still Phantom of the Paradise, which I'm like, that movie turned 50 years old. What the fuck?
Oh my God. Wow. You lose track of time eventually.
Yeah. The one I've been wanting to see. Speaking of movies I've been slept on, was it Dark Harvest? The one by David Slade.
I
Apparently, it's
don't.
on same director as 30 Days of Night and Hard Candy.
I might have to. I have not seen it. I'll have to put that one on my list though. Hard candy alone is a seller for me. I loved hard
Yeah.
candy.
And for like people who haven't seen his movies, like all the best looking episodes of Hannibal were
Mhm.
directed by him. Were directed by David Slade.
Oh well, that's all you got to tell me.
Yes, he directed Twilight 3. We don't talk about that shit.
No, it like that still pretty though. You have to admit, still pretty for the
Yeah.
source material.
The fact that I remember when it came out, a lot of critics were like, "Why is the movie so much better than the other ones?" And I'm like, "That's a good praise right there for a Twilight movie." It's like it's way better than all the other movies.
That should tell you why.
Yeah, it's like, but the weird thing is, it's like I want to talk about this, and I think that's something you'd appreciate. What is it when you're gonna? Why is it when you're with a really good director and they're like, "We're gonna put you on a movie and it's gonna be awesome," and then you watch the movie and you're like, "What the fuck happened?" I think it's called the live action Disney curse, where it's like you get Bill Condon
Oh, ew.
and yeah, because Bill Condon is an amazing director, and
Oh,
like
yeah, but all it takes is something in the cog to
yeah,
catch, and then everything falls apart.
because it's so weird because you look at his career, like he got
Mm-hmm.
because you could tell when when a director is taking a paycheck, and he
Mm-hmm.
took that paycheck three times because he did the last two Twilight, the final Twilight movies. And
Mm-hmm.
the Fifth Estate, they're like weird propaganda piece that was basically like, look how awful WikiLeaks is, look how terrible they are because we're totally getting paid by somebody right now.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then he goes back to making cool movies with Ian McKellen,
Mm.
and then Beauty and the Beast, which was what the fuck?
It, every dog has his day, and not
Yeah.
in a good way.
But you know what? He made Gods and Monsters, which is still one of the best movies of all time. That it's like if you are a horror fan, anyone out there, and you have not seen Gods and Monsters, it is one of the best movies ever made. It's not a horror movie, but it's literally about the director of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And it's
Mhm.
got Ian McKellen and Brendan Fraser
Which
giving the best performance he'd ever
would
given till
which are
maybe in the last couple of
sellers.
years. Yeah.
That's seller points. Yeah.
It's a have you ever seen it?
Mm-mm.
It is a great freaking movie, and it's not on Blu-ray. I don't know why.
Mm.
Like it's
I mean, some of them aren't anymore. It's weird how they pick and
yeah.
choose that.
But yeah, it's on streaming, it's on Blu-ray. It's like just it's one of those just pay for it on Prime or track down the
Mhm.
DVD because
Or flag it down somewhere.
yeah.
Mhm.
What are you talking about? No one ever does that. What is this?
I was talking
To,
about yard sales, but all right. I mean,
what is this to rent? So when you go to the rental store,
not a
we
good.
say that, but it's like I'm an hour away from Austin, and like you're in Portland, so it's
Mhm.
like yeah, we both been to. There's still rental stores in both places.
I mean, in my defense, though, we have the last blockbuster.
I
So,
know. It's dude. I'm still envious of that. Did now I forget? Do they still rent movies, or is it mostly like?
I
Because I
mean,
know they started making
it's a
Airbnb.
shop for a reason, but they still technically have it's all part of like the little touristy, I guess you go like the tourist trap
Yeah,
mentality of it. So
dude. I need to eventually get to Portland. I probably will just set up a little hammock in Pal's Books, and like nobody will ever find me.
worth
I think
it,
it's yeah. I think
worth
it's
it, 100% worth it. Pals
yeah. I
is
might go to
amazing.
jail for like a couple months, but it's whatever.
It'd be worth it. You'll have books. It's fine.
Yeah, they have books in jail.
Yeah,
There's
library.
some other stuff too, but whatever.
But I've got books, and that's all that matters.
Oh, dude. By the way,
Ooh, that's cute. Oh, that's cool.
hold on.
Oh, that is super sick. That's really cool.
Now, here's the thing. Like, we found this kick-ass horror store that unfortunately is closed now. They keep talking about a new location, like every cool gimmicky store, but
Yeah.
it's like there hasn't been any announcements on it.
Right.
And it's in New Braunfels, basically about halfway between here and Austin. And the I can't remember the name of the company, but they make all the really kick-ass horror movie masks.
Hmm.
That was one of theirs, and they are just losing the license to Halloween 3. If you can
Oh,
believe it, I'm not the one who noticed that. Jen was. And I'm
really?
so glad that she did
All
because
right.
I
Fuck.
bought that right away. I'm like, I don't give a shit if it's $30. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're gonna grab it while you can.
Yep. Because you can't get that anymore.
And
I
they're
even
all
love
trash quality anymore.
I even love the even the TV buttons on there.
Little rivets. This is
Yeah.
cute.
That's one of those movies it's have you ever had that thing where it's like I hate the whole pretentiousness of overground?
Hmm.
Because I remember everybody talking shit about Halloween 3 for the longest time. And then I was like, you know what? Everyone always tells me how bad this is, and I've always not watched it, and they don't show it on TV. And I think it was like 1999 or 2000. I'm like, I'm gonna watch this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sitting here watching Halloween 3, and I'm like, all right, all right, what the fuck? All right, okay, this is fucking awesome. And I'm like, and I would tell people about this shit, and they would bash on me and be like, ah, movie's terrible. I'm like, have you seen it? No. Well, that part's fucking important. And
I
now
think
it seems like it's the opposite, where
I think that
everyone's talking about how much they always loved it.
I think that it's an unfortunate. Mm, I'm not sure the word I want to use. It sucks because you get groups of people who either talk about something so much and rave about it so much that it turns you off to want to see it, or you have the opposite effect and they shit on it so much that you're like, all right, well, I guess I won't watch it then. I can't bring myself to do that with anything anymore because when I was younger, obviously, it's like, well, you're lame if you watch that. It's like, all right, I'll just be lame then because I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
Um, and I make it a point to watch things whether the stuff is really bad on it or not. I mean, look at okay, so recent example, look at Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Five Nights at Freddy's came
I
out.
still need to watch it.
So it's worth a watch, but I want to remind everybody with gentle hands that it took a little bit of a departure from the source material. So there were a handful of like OG Five Nights fans because again, it's been like 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So there was a handful of original fans that shit all over the movie immediately because they were like, well, this is different and this is different and this looked wrong and this was whatever. But then if you notice after the initial, like I thought XYZ, people saw it, were like, okay. And then all of a sudden, a rush of people were like, no, this is amazing. It's such a good movie. And the internet that originally started off shitting on this movie suddenly took a complete opposite
180.
turn, right? And couldn't stop talking about it,
Yeah.
right? So it is unfortunate that there are instances where that can happen or the opposite can happen and a fantastic movie just gets ignored forever and ever and ever and then there's a cult following. So like The Cell is one of my favorite films for that exact reason.
Sounds so good though.
It's phenomenal, but the
Yeah.
problem is during the time period when it came out, you were in this weird position where horror was not as forefront. Even the actors couldn't salvage it to be, something bigger, we'll call it. Which is really unfortunate because not only visually is it a phenomenally beautiful film, but it's an interesting concept. For me personally, it stood the test of time for horror. I think that not only are there extremely notable scenes that to this day you won't forget, period, end of story.
Yeah.
And nobody's done anything quite like it since with some of the delivery. But it kind of stands as an untouchable. But then you've got people who have seen it and they're like, I didn't get it. And it's like, all right, well, you know what? Too pretty for you. Fuck off. But then you've got the other group of people where we saw it when, it was still in its early days to now, and we haven't changed our opinions.
It's that whole thing, like the narrative, we've seen the narrative before,
Right.
but people have to realize because there are people when people complain about style over substance, it's like it
Mm-hmm.
depends on the movie.
Yes.
Because that movie is definitely style over substance. Because it as a
Mm-hmm.
story, we've seen all these elements before because it's just actual serial killer shit pretty much that they
Mm-hmm.
put into a movie.
Yep.
But it's like it's also actual serial killer shit. So it's like you're going to be drawing from actual cases, and people have seen these cases so much, especially the whole obsession with serial killers that is just carried from the 80s till like today, which
Mm-hmm.
is insane. Um, but it's also a perfect example of the a director knows how to do style over substance and is aware that they are doing it.
Mm,
Mine is somebody who, even though the funny thing is I'm a Snyder fan, but I kind of hate Snyder fans.
mm,
And because a lot of them don't seem to understand, it's like there are movies that he does very well.
mm,
And then there are movies where he just completely is like, I've got to make it everything awesome. And it just is like the worst thing ever, like Rebel Moon.
yeah.
Um, but it's one of those things where it's like you have to know that you are doing style over substance to make it
Mm,
work. Because if you don't, and you just think that you are the shit,
mm,
then people are gonna notice.
right.
Yeah,
Well, and I mean that goes on the dangers of elevating yourself for no reason.
yeah. Kind of like
So,
how M. Night had that lull for the longest time. But then and the funny thing because it's like the whole deal. It's like you take all of your own hype, and you accept all of your own hype. And he did that.
I've got my own opinions about a lot of his films. Um, I there's a handful that I'm like, yeah, they're pretty good. I could give a fuck about a lot more that he's made than I could care about the ones that I did kind of enjoy. But you're completely correct. And it also, I guess he's a really good example of what we talked about earlier, which is the shift in dynamic of certain directing styles and how sometimes you're just eating it a little bit
Yeah.
for no reason that's notable. And then that's it. And I felt that way about the last couple for him.
Horror movies are that weird point when it comes to films that it's kind of like with action movies. The lower the budget you give the director, the
Mm-hmm.
better work they're probably gonna do.
Well, because
Because
they don't have a choice.
yeah, because look at
You
like he
mhm,
started like, in the $200 million budget, he did that shitty After Earth movie, which was
right,
clearly a Will Smith controlling that movie kind of movie.
right.
But then you give him a nothing budget, and he did The Visit, and then he did
Mm-hmm.
Wayward Pines, which like
Mm-hmm.
nobody watched, and then he did Split, and it's like, oh, so
One of my
nothing.
no, you're completely correct. One of my favorite styles of film. They're not called this. I call them this. I call them black box films.
Yeah,
So, you know how in theater, a black box production takes place in one room with one set area, right? And that's
yeah,
it. Like your reliance on a black box production is your fucking actors. If
yeah.
your actors cannot sell the story to the audience, you don't have a production, right? So I call these films black box films because inherently what they are is primarily, and I use this with quotation marks, but they are primarily a one set event, right? So majority of the storytelling takes place in one room. And there's not really a lot to go off of beyond that one room. So your actors or your characters have to be able to tell the story for you. So for example, there is a film called Low that is just literally LO, but it's about a man that falls in love with this mysterious woman and she leaves him a book and disappears one day and he summons a demon named Low to help him find her. But Low was a fascinating, almost like old school. Uh, do you remember Lorne from Angel?
Yeah. It's been
Okay,
so long since
so
I watched Angel.
right, so some of the demon styling, there's a demon that you meet in this film that reminds me a lot of Lorne, but like a really shitty version of Lorne who's just a jackass. So it's good though, but it's almost that kind of comedic, like showboat theater production style,
Yeah,
but it only takes place in one room, and it's only done that way because of how this demon and this human are talking. So the human is regaling the tale about this woman, and the demon is listening to him tell this story while he's trying to trick him away into the circle. And it's a good example of storytelling in a very tight area. Another example of a black box film is like Exam.
Sam
Uh,
is so fucking good.
so okay, yes, exactly. But see
Yeah,
what you know this Exam takes place primarily in one room,
Because
right?
you have the apartment and then you have the exam, and that's
Yep.
it.
And that's it. So that's a really good example. And exam is one of the ones next to load that I use as like trying to explain what a black box film to me is.
Yeah.
But exam was phenomenal for that reason too, because you have to rely on the, kind of what's occurring. So you can't tell me that films like Low or films like Exam had this massive, insane, million-dollar budget when they were working with singular set listings and then their list of characters. And I do heavily believe, especially after having worked on a horror production that was very tight budgeted, I can tell you that if you don't put your entire ussy into what you're doing, it's never going to work. And that includes the cast, the crew, everybody has to be hands on deck.
Dude, watching speaking of exam, that's one of those movies where I went back and I watched it because I'm like, oh, I remember that movie being really good. What else
Right.
has he done since that? Holy crap, he did The Shack.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching, I'm like, wait, that's Kim Chan. Because when I first saw it, it was literally when it first came out, and I'm like, it's like just a note, and I'm like, that's Chakotay Emoji from
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and I'm
Right.
like, and Colin Salmon from I knew Colin Salmon right away because I'm like, he was like the one thing about Resident Evil, the first movie, besides Mila Jovovich and Michelle Rodriguez, where I'm like, I will remember you after this movie because
Even
you're a
even
badass.
so, right.
Yeah. And he's one of those actors, like, he was just severely underrated. And I understand the idea of a working actor, but it's like, it's like, this guy needs to be in more.
Yeah.
But for anyone listening, perfect example, probably the most high profile recent example of the Black Box movie is The Hateful Eight.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say one of the newest, and even then, Hateful Eight still changes enough
Because you have the
angle.
opening, and then you have the scene in the snow. We all
Yeah,
know the scene with the snow, but we can't talk about that on YouTube.
no. Plus, I think it's officially technically three scenes, three, four, arguable. Mm,
And I can't remember the. Now, have you ever seen Rope by Alfred Hitchcock?
no.
Dude, that's your movie right there. It's
I'll
literally
have,
also a dinner party, and it's
yeah,
about 2 minutes to prove they committed the perfect crime.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's I think it's one of those. It's all if I remember, it's mostly done through one just massive tracking shot, or
Mm-hmm.
there are a number of massive tracking shots. So if you like,
Mm-hmm.
so anyone who ever watched anything by De Palma and were like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that shot's amazing, it's like this is where all that came from, and this was like the king of that movie,
I'll have to
of the whole tracking shot thing.
I'll have to add that one to the list. I've been meaning to watch the old Schoolhouse on Haunted Hill too, so
Oh, that's such a
I'll have to add it to the list.
which is so funny because you mentioned campy horror and like
Mhm.
that's the first one I always think of, and it's one of those few where the remake is just as good, if not slightly better.
I love House on Haunted Hill. It's one of my favorites. It's a lot of people think that it's complete garbage, but fuck you, I like it. So,
That movie's awesome.
um,
We had
I
William Malone on a couple of years back, and
that's
I was
cool.
like, "Why did you use CGI for that one scene at the end of the movie?" And I
Mm.
love that. I love being proven wrong because he said that was not CGI. That was the same special effect that they used. That I can't remember. It was a post-production effect, but he basically said this is an effect that they've been using since 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it's where you
Oh,
see
that
like
would make
all the
sense. Yeah,
ghosts of everything at the
when it
end of the
comes
movie.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was all post-production work,
Hmm.
nothing CG. And I'm like, and when you go back and look at the budget, it's like, yeah, they probably could not have done a really big CGI effect back then for that movie.
That would have been, especially during that time period, it would have been excessively expensive.
Yeah. Sorry, I did not mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. No, I mean that's kind of the gist of it. I gotta add. I'll have to add that to the list though when I am going through my older movies.
Yeah. There's this. I remember. But dude, if you want my one of my biggest geek out moments, I got to meet Gail Simone
Oh yeah,
at the first Fan Expo Dallas, and I'm just
yo.
chilling, talking to her husband and her, and like there was a line, and I'm like, what the
Mhm.
fuck? Why is there no line behind me? So we just hung out. We talked about Hammer horror movies because they had just started like binge watching tons of Hammer stuff because they had
Yeah.
just finished all the Universal monster movies and then they're moving on to Hammer.
Mhm.
And now she's writing Uncanny X-Men because Gail Simone's awesome, and I'm
Yep.
like,
No, Gail. I've never had the pleasure of meeting Gail, but we've had our exchanges on like Twitter, X or whatever it's called now. But amazing. Just really, really, really nice person. So
Plus, because of her, I know that Cyclops has the best heat vision.
arguable, but fair point.
Yep. It's all about her and Superman. I love that people still get butthurt at her and like, oh my gosh, you don't know about comics. It's like, it's a joke. What's wrong with you? But who'd have
That
thought
would
there'd be toxic masculinity on social media?
that would take 2 seconds of thought, and that's just not something that can be summoned from the depths.
Yeah. Dude, oh, holy crap. I realize how fast our conversations tend to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm
That,
like, it's already 42 minutes in. What the fuck?
yep, that's the way. That's the way of the time jumping.
It's a way of the autumn and the way of like when you haven't talked to your friend in like 5 years, and it's
That's
like
also true.
all that conversation is going to download.
Whoosh.
Yeah. But yeah, beyond that, dude, because we talked about horror, we talked about
Yep.
cosplay,
Yep.
we gotta talk about streaming. We gotta talk about your video game streaming because it's funny seeing like the strongest woman I know just be freaked out by anything, by a video game on YouTube.
It's a lot more of slamming my head into the desk, I think. Because it does not fail for me to jump, scream, get mad, and then realize that I almost dropped my headset like every time.
Yeah.
But I've had the pleasure of playing because I still am very much in my roots. I very much enjoy the independent horror games. That's primarily what you'll see me streaming. Sans like Baldur's Gate or something, but I have a couple actually that I'm looking forward to now that Hell Month is over and I can try to get back to my normalcy. I will start streaming again. I have Silent Breath. Zoocosis, I think, is coming out here shortly as well, which is it's a, how do I explain? You're protecting and curing the animals that are turning into like eldritch horrors.
Shit.
It gets pretty nasty. Like visually, it's woo. The trailer shows like you're walking in, and I think it's a kangaroo, and you walk into a room, and there's a kangaroo on the ceiling, and it like splits open and tries
What?
to eat you.
And what's
But
this called
yeah,
again?
I think it's Zoocosis is the title. But that and then Silent Breath was the kind of the VCR style visual game that looks a little more realistic, where you have to it triggers your mic. So if you're not quiet, it gets worse.
Oh god, we would both lose.
Yeah, no, I plan on a lot of loss for that game. Gonna do my best. Planning on loss. If
You
I
know,
don't if I don't lose, the dogs will make me lose, so it's fine.
I always whenever I'm talk about anything, I always compare myself to there's a one of the Joe Kelly issues of Deadpool where
Mm-hmm.
he gets caught by one of his villains. They put him in a bit in the pendulum situation, and every time that he talks, the pendulum comes down a little bit lower,
Just
and so he just keeps going and going. And they go, why are you talking? Why are you still talking? I don't know. I just felt like it seemed like a good thing to do. I mean, like, yeah, I've got to go. I got to go sometime. And then
yeah,
literally the
like
whole thing is him getting himself cut out of it
yep.
so he can escape it at the end. But it's just one of the funniest damn things. We talk about, oh my God, it's a black room story.
Yep.
It's a black room story. It's a
Yep. The
bottle
writing had to
story.
stand for itself.
Yeah, because it's literally him in the pit and the pendulum the
Mhm.
entire time driving this guy crazy.
which which is very Deadpool fashion. So that's
Yeah.
fair.
There was a point like I remember one of my friends he basically said, "Well, come on, the movies are R-rated. Devil should always be
Mm.
R-rated." And I'm like, first off, that's bullshit. And this is something that I know will piss people off because I'm like, Deadpool was PG-13, like hard PG-13 for the longest time. And the best
Technically,
Deadpool comics are basically hard PG-13 because you got Cable and Deadpool, Ben Nicieza, and you got Deadpool by Joe Kelly.
I don't
And
think
then
even Deadpool versus Carnage was light sauce. Like even that wasn't too bad.
yeah, every time they try to make Deadpool, every time they my it's so weird that the movies are the only ones where a mature rated Deadpool's ever really worked.
Well, it is and it isn't. One, Ryan Reynolds isn't going to fuck that up. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
Like at all. The man just is Wade Wilson. Um, but that aside, like I think that when
I
it
love the tattoo, by
comes,
the way.
oh yeah, Yeah,
And by the way, is that a Deadpool chair?
it is.
Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
Where
it's
did you get
it's
that?
this topic was well placed. Um,
Yes,
no,
planned.
it definitely planned. I think it's interesting because like you do get some of the violence and whatnot in classic Deadpool fashion, even through some of the runs, like the Merc with the Mouth run, of course. I think that much in the same vein of any other comic series, though, like we've never, because you're right, we've never really hit like the hard, R rating of Deadpool in comics per
Well, they
se.
had that one Max Deadpool series, but like no one talks about it because it wasn't that good.
Well, so Bad Blood, I think it's Bad Blood, is the one of the newer runs.
Oh, Bad Blood. But I was talking about the one by David Lapham, who's usually a really good writer, but
Right.
it didn't hit.
Well, but that's the problem though, is like we once again revisit the conversation a few minutes ago, except in the direction of comics, where sometimes you miss a phenomenal run solely because people ignored it, you
Yeah.
know. But no, the films I believe work because we are still sourcing what Deadpool is, and Reynolds has the ability to properly fine tune what Deadpool actually represents as a character, which everybody is like, yeah, wacky wahoo man in a red jumpsuit kind of deal. The reality, though, is that Deadpool is one of the most depressing fucking characters that you could possibly pick apart,
Dude,
both
the
in
Ajax
metaphor and
issue in the
literally.
Joe Kelly series is one of the
Yeah,
most
like,
fucked up things ever in the mental hospital.
well, and I guess that kind of pinpoints the point altogether
Yeah.
is like you are looking at a character that people, they want to run around not to say there's anything wrong with this. Let me clarify before you jump my ass. We get these people who dress up as Deadpool for Comic Cons or for conventions in general, and they run around with like literally tacos in their hands and wear slippers, and it's always like funny, funky, haha time for a lot of those people. And
Yeah.
not to say they don't recognize the source material or that they don't understand the character in that capacity, but there's not that visit to Wade as he is,
Yeah.
which is why I have my stuff for Deadpool for costume. I just haven't shot it. And the reason I haven't shot it just yet is because I'm trying to figure out the best way that I want to put my feet in the water to capture a lot of that emotion that comes with Deadpool, like still get some of the humor to it, but also just how devastating that he can be as a character for people, especially for people who have had to face loss or face, something that they could almost see of themselves in him as a character.
Well, and
So,
it makes sense because all the characters you tend to cosplay have that sense of intensity behind them because it just, and that would carry it through especially if you do it right.
right. And that's kind of the goal is the problem though, and I hate this, and this is probably the first, last, and only thing I'll say about it on this in this moment. I have no problem with people who like to cosplay things for fun. I think that's great. You should have fun. That is quite literally what, cosplay or costuming is for. It's not a
Yeah.
territorial pissing match of who's better at what. It literally is for fun and to learn new and really cool skills, and to keep getting better if that's what you want to do, whatever the case may be. On the other hand, um I personally like to gear my own work sometimes for fun, but also towards characters that I resonate with for one reason or another. Either I just genuinely like the character and their attitude and what they, who they are, or it's a deeper reason. Any costume or any photo set that I've done where I've actually put my whole like ussy into the entire thing and really wanted to push emotions and stuff, never sold. Or if they did, they sold like a handful, and it was people that were really amazing and either appreciated the character and the fact that I tried to gun it that way, or they were they genuinely wanted to support
Yeah.
the art piece. And one of my favorite photo sets I've done was the crow set that I did that was based off
So,
of yeah that was based off of specifically Draven. And I should clarify. So like Obar Draven, with a lot of like the the concept basis of who he became. I didn't get the opportunity to shoot on the train tracks like I wanted to, which is what I wanted to use to drive home for the graphic novel or comic, however you want to address it. But that was one of my favorite shoots, and it fell to the wayside a little bit because it wasn't what people wanted to see.
Dude, I'm gonna tell you
I
this. Jen loved it, by the way. That was one of the ones
I'm
where
glad.
every time I've talked about, every time we've talked about you,
Yeah.
that costume comes up. And she's even shown her family that costume.
Oh, that's
Like her
cool.
mom, her sister were like, basically they both said you should be just be the crow in the movie.
So Ellis and I talked about doing a fan written film that we were going to discuss doing that was centered around some stuff, but it's that's a whole other topic. But for perspective, and I appreciate that sincerely. But it sucks to put something so important into action, deliver it, and then realize that because you didn't show tits and ass, that no one wants to pay attention to it. Everybody, and this is the thing that I was telling you, like I'll say it once and I'll leave it alone. Everybody wants to fucking complain about how people are doing, lingerie sets or lewds and nudes or whatever all of the time. Like, you fucking e-girls, blah, blah, blah. First of all, motherfuckers, okay? If you took the time to actually support the shit that we wanted to put all of our energy and effort into, which are the big builds, the big costumes,
Dude, you're
all
Red
of
Hood.
like yeah, like Red Hood, going on site to shoot this, which takes time, energy, and our own money to do it on top of everything else. If you put your fucking shit towards that for us and bought those sets, you would get more quality and delivery out of that. But because we can't fucking sell that, because nobody buys it, and we can't do more if we don't have the money to, then I'm not exactly sure what anybody expects. So then in the same breath, these dudes want to fucking complain. Dudes in a general term, people in general, whatever. People want to bitch about how girls are selling themselves and doing all this shit in lingerie and other means or whatever it is that they're doing. One, if they like it, let them enjoy it. And that goes for the dudes, thems, everybody's.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys are doing that and you love what you do, more fucking power to you. That's the way it should be. But as someone else coming in and going, well, I just think that it's a little bit like, kind of like whorish, like it's e-horror. All right, that's
It's like,
cool, Carol. So question, where did you put your money? Because your husband put it in Susie Joe's pocket over here, who had a thong on. But then she had this badass Warhammer build of one of the Sisters of Battle
and then no one talked
that
about it.
nobody talks about. Anyway, like, I'll get off my high horse. It's just that is it is a topic that drives me batshit. I will always do what I love. I will always do characters that I love, even if there's not we'll call it a lewd aspect to it, because I also shoot that. Like, I love doing it. I think it's fun. But there are some characters I will never do that to. And that is exactly why Draven, for example, for that photo set, it didn't sell. And it didn't sell because perfect. I didn't loot it. I refused to.
It's disrespect. It would be disrespectful, especially considering the history of Brandon Lee and the reason that the comic was created.
Right. And I can't say that personally, right? So like, yeah. I'm not going to shit on other people who have chosen to do that, because that's completely within their prerogative. And you know what? If that's your thing, that's fine. For me personally, because of what it meant to me personally, and because of my feelings and my partner's feelings towards that particular work, I didn't feel like it was right to do it for myself. So I didn't. And there will always be characters like that for me that exist. On the other hand of it, there are some where I'm like, yeah, fuck it. They'd think it's funny. Like looting Wade, knowing that there's something with Wade and like his background, but almost then still
for it.
Right, still doing a loot of that. Like it, I mean, there's literally the scene in the fucking bathtub. What run was that?
It's been so long.
He's laying in the bathtub just nude, and they walk in on him on accident.
Oh my dude, anyway. I don't remember that one, but I'm gonna throw one at you right now. The Marvel Girl costume from the Cable and Deadpool run.
Yes.
This is all for leg and crotch for days.
Just forever and ever. But that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Crotch for days needs to be like one of our taglines, or both of our taglines.
I'm here for that. I'd wear that shirt.
Yep.
But that's a prime example, right? Like you get that as an example, and then it isn't out of sorts to see that material in a set like that, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, but I think it's great, and I think that everybody should just be happy doing the shit that they should do and not worry about the rest of it.
I'm gonna throw a rant out there too.
Mm,
And okay. I don't know if this ever happened to you,
mm.
but because of my want for source material and research, I've been having people tell me I was a gatekeeper. And I'm like, I'm not a gatekeeper. Because I got so aggravated by this X-Men the Animated Series group where I was literally being like, this is from the comic. This is actual character history. Here is the page. And I basically be like, well, I haven't read that. I only watched the cartoon. And then they'd be like, well, you spent money on the comics. I didn't read them. And I would basically get treated like a gatekeeper. But my whole deal, I tell people there are sources, there are legitimate sources out there. Because I'm sorry, if you're buying comics, if you're doing comic scans, you're killing the comic industry, especially
Yeah,
for
you
independent
are.
comics.
Yeah.
Uh, and by the way, for anyone who's going to call me out on the two rent thing, I don't do that shit either. Because there's so many cheap places that you can get movies legitimately. Shutter is $74 a year, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like the cheapest streaming service out there that doesn't suck.
Yeah. Well,
And
even so, like Chilling app, and I mean, obviously, like I do work for them as a narrator and stuff, so I'm on the
yeah,
shelf here. I'm saying that outright, but that's why Chilling, for example, started moving towards being a streaming service across the board for horror. So they hit podcasts, they hit narrations, they started doing independent films, and I don't think people understand that like that is quite literally what keeps things going on one hand.
yeah. Because like people, I remember I got mad at somebody once
Mhm.
because you know me, I'm pretty good at keeping like an even keel when it comes to
Right.
people, no matter how stupid they are. I mean, there have been people who we fired that I've handled very, very well, despite the
Mhm.
fact that I had to fire them.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm talking about. And but there was I told somebody I'm not a gatekeeper at all. They said, "What do you mean?" Because I constantly tell people you
Mhm.
can read on Marvel Unlimited, you can read on DC Universe.
Mhm.
Go and I played posts about if you like this, you should read this.
But
You can find it here.
I don't think it's gatekeeping to want to moderate the direction of support.
Yeah,
I don't think that's gatekeeping. I think gatekeeping would be, well, I'm not going to give you this list of sites that would actually enable helping these authors and
because it's
da da
my
da.
thing.
Right. That's gatekeeping. What
Yeah,
you're doing is merely giving a direction for support sourcing, which is literally keeping them in business.
yeah. And it's like just because someone does their research and wants you to do your research too,
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're gatekeeping. It means they want you to be able to come from the most informed source possible
That
or
just
most informed opinion possible.
that just tells me somebody wanted to baseball you a buzzword is all that
Yeah,
is.
pretty
And
much.
try to make it out to be something that it isn't because they literally do not understand what they're saying. And that
Yeah.
happens a lot on the internet, God forbid.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. This is crazy
Whatever.
talk.
It's like going to church, baby.
So with that, as we're kind of getting things wrapped up and on the
Mhm.
road, where can people find you? Because I know they can find you. They know they can find you. But just for those five people who don't know at this point, and usually I make that joke at the beginning,
Of
but it's
course.
like we know there's like everyone knows you. But for those like five dreadful sociopaths who live in the corner of a basement just doing this over and over and over
Me
again.
too, guys. It's fine.
There you are. Um, where can people find you?
So I actually have a couple of different sources. My primary socials can be found at officialautumnivy.com. And that is quite literally everything for the most part. My official website is autumnivy.com. And the nice thing about that official website is not only can you find the links that you need to find, but I also have merch available as well. So I do actually have I need to actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I need to update. I have keychains and stickers and stuff too, so I've got to update that. But Yeah. So merch can be found at autumnivy.com, and all of my other social links can be found at officialautumnivy.com. That includes the spicy stuff and everything else. If you would like more horror narrations from me, you can find me over at chillingapp.com. If you like the spicy audios from me, you can find me at tryquinn.com. And of course, as always, current projects, we are doing Roll for Cake, which can be found at twitch.tv/Tanis Junior 93. Or the VODs are available on YouTube as well. There should be a link to that. And they actually have just launched a Patreon. So if you would like to support us playing Roll for Cake, you're welcome to do so there. And the projects I'm looking forward to that I can't talk about, just keep your eyes peeled. I promise I'll say something when I can.
And with the Circuit 42, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You could have found us on Twitter slash, I'm not going to call it X. But we just couldn't take the musk of it all. It just smelled terrible, so we just got out of there. But but you can listen to us on Google Play. You can listen to us on Apple, and of course, you can listen to us on Spotify. And apparently, we've been popping up at random places. If you want to listen to us there too, go for it. And of course, you can now watch us as of this past month on YouTube, as we have brought back the Circuit 42 YouTube channel because we saw 20,000 views on some of our videos. We're like, maybe we should go back to that. But yeah, with that, dude, this has been a blast. It has been
Of
way
course.
too freaking months we had you on the show, but also I think you're at that point of business where it's like it's a 5-year window. So you got to work with that 5-year window because
See
you're
see
awesome.
what see what's going on in there.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for having me again, and I'm glad that we got the opportunity to catch up. I'm sure that we will do this again in another 5 years, but at the
Let's hope
least,
we're sooner than 5 years.
I hope so. But at the least, it's good to see you guys still planting your feet and moving forward. And I just want to thank everybody for stopping in and listening. And as always, don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Yep. And with that, just have a great night, everybody. Thank you for listening. And once again, just keep on listening, keep on watching, both us and Autumn the Wizard. And there you are. So with that, have a great night, everyone.